All right. Welcome back to Shut Up and Ball. I am Aaron Chow, accompanied by John Harris, as always. And wow, what a trade deadline, to say the least. Talk about just started with a bang, and it did not stop. A lot of moves happened, obviously, and that's what we're mainly here to get into today, just to go over the trade deadline. We're not going to go over every single trade because that'd be kind of boring, some of them. But we're trying to go over the main ones and then talk winners, losers of the trade deadline, in our opinions, of course. And before I do dive into that with John, if you're watching on YouTube, please like, comment, subscribe, as we are getting close to 1,000 subs there. And if you're listening on any of our podcast mediums or audio mediums, rate, review as well, please. But anyhow, let's get into it, John. I'm going to start with the one that happened a couple days. Obviously, this was like the first domino to fall, and it was ironic because it happened, I think it was last Saturday morning. Gosh, it was, I woke up to the news, but just a little behind the scenes, we had recorded the basketball episode like a day or two earlier. We did our Kyrie trade predictions. And then I wake up Saturday morning, see Kyrie Irving has been traded to the Dallas Mavericks. Before I dive into the specifics of the trade, John, like, did you have a similar experience where you just like were somewhere and then you just got the news and you're just like, what the heck?
Yeah, my immediate first thought was, well, I guess we can't post that video anymore because it's kind of pointless. But yeah, I don't know. It just kind of came out of nowhere. It feels like with the trade deadline, usually the big moves don't happen until like deadline day around lunchtime. You got like 4 or 5 hours left until the deadline hits. And that's when the big moves happen. And there was a couple of big moves that did happen later. But the Kyrie one happened a little earlier. And I don't know. I think it was just the Nets were just ready to wipe their hands clean. We are done with Kyrie. Obviously, as we're going to talk about later, more moves were on the way, and I think they knew that. So once they saw this Mavs offer, which I think was a really good offer from the Mavericks, the Nets, they were like, we'll do it. Especially since Kyrie's contract was going to run out at the end of the season. It was like, they probably don't have a ton of leverage. They don't have a lot of room to really sit there and negotiate and try and get any crazy deals. So I assume this was the best one. They weren't going to waste time. They were just going to take it because obviously the bigger piece was coming after that, and this was probably a signal to the rest of the NBA about what was to come. But yeah, Kyrie to the Mavs. I mean, that was a team that we talked about that we thought was a great fit. We'll see how it works out because obviously with Kyrie Irving, the concern is always the off-the-court stuff, his personality, the way he conducts himself, all that kind of stuff. So we'll see.
Yeah, so we'll see how it works out. But in regards to the specifics, so it's Kyrie Irving and Markieff Morris is who Dallas will be acquiring, and then Brooklyn will be acquiring Spencer Dinwiddie. So he will not be the first one, by the way, having another kind of awkward homecoming. There will be more. Dorian Finney-Smith, which is a very good piece for Brooklyn. 2029 first-round pick, a 2027 second-round pick, and a 2029 second round pick. So like you said, John, yes, some people may say it's obviously lesser than the Gobert package, but the important thing that you noted, not a lot, half a season left, or not even half a season, but, just this last year. Doesn't help that he's already mentioned that he's we'll talk about Phoenix later, but he's kind of already flirting, it seems like, with other teams because he mentioned he likes Phoenix. But he did make a bunch of remarks afterwards, also kind of at the Nets, kind of throwing shade at their front office. So I guess who really knows what kind of hijinks or just what it was like between those, Kyrie versus that Nets front office, as we all know. So we'll talk probably more about Dallas later and the fit. Anyway, let's go to the next domino that fell. I know there were a couple other trades. Once again, not mentioning the kind of trades that were kind of just salary dumps or whatever, because there were a bunch of those too. This next one was a pretty big domino in regards to the Lakers. Obviously, they missed out on Kyrie Irving. So then they finally got rid of Russell Westbrook. Who knows if the final domino was him arguing with Darvin Ham at halftime. I think during the Thunder game when LeBron broke the record, which sorry to not try to overshadow it. Congrats, LeBron. But Lakers managed to get rid of Russell Westbrook. It was a 3-team trade. I'm going to start with who the Lakers got. Lakers brought back D'Angelo Russell, like I said, and will still not be the last homecoming we see. So D'Angelo Russell back in LA, the team that drafted him. Malik Beasley, he coming from the Jazz, and Jared Vanderbilt. And then Minnesota was obviously involved in this one since they acquired or sent over Russell. They get Mike Conley from the Jazz and 3 second-round picks and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And then Utah acquires Russell Westbrook, Lakers 2027 first-round pick, which is top 4 protected, Juan Toscano-Anderson and Damian Jones. And apparently Russell Westbrook may play out his contract with the Jazz. He may not be bought out. I saw that report on Bleacher Report. So regardless, the biggest news obviously is LA is free of Russell Westbrook, John. All their problems are now solved. Or do you think otherwise?
I mean, obviously, I think the Russell Westbrook thing had to happen.
Yeah.
Just from a media perspective, it was terrible. Whether the fit was great in the locker room, the results were not there. And clearly the fit on the court was not perfect. It was better once he moved to the bench, but I still don't think that was ever going to vibe with Russ. I think he accepted it because of, where the team was. But I don't know. The trade had to happen. And so good on LA for making it happen. They got a better package than I thought they would. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised they only had to give up 1 first-round pick. I know that a lot of people are going to focus on D'Angelo Russell being a part of it. Personally, I really like Malik Beasley as the main piece. You're not going to make all that for Malik Beasley, obviously. Like, D'Angelo Russell needs to be included. But D'Lo, I don't think that... I think people, because he was in Minnesota, are going to kind of ignore the last handful of years and think back to what he was in Brooklyn. But I don't think that he's that borderline all-star anymore. He doesn't provide much defensive value. He's not as efficient as you maybe would like him to be offensively. That said, for the Lakers, I think schematically he's an upgrade. He fits what they want to do. He can be a shooter. He can create his own shot. And he's not going to be some super high-volume, inefficient shot kind of a person like Westbrook was. So, I don't know. I just think in terms of fitting around LeBron and AD, he's a better fit. But like I said, I just think the best part of what LA got was Malik Beasley. A wing, he can be versatile. He can add a little bit of playmaking. He can play defense, which I think is needed for that team. He gives them just another little bit of energy that you might not see out of LeBron and Anthony Davis all the time because of their age, because of injuries, whatever you might have. I just think Malik Beasley is one of those guys who can kind of just fit in and be a sniper and play defense for you. So I think LA definitely, this was a great move for them, especially, like I said, only having to get 1 first-round pick. And for the other teams, we'll talk about them a little later.
We'll definitely go more in depth in some of these teams. But, you mentioned Beasley and Vanderbilt, probably the huge pieces because those guys are versatile. They kind of just needed more role players. We all know they have the sizzle in LeBron and AD. Now they just need a little more of the meat and potatoes. And they've made other moves. And they got some other guys like that. So, great move for the Lakers. And obviously Utah, they're just acquiring picks. We all know what Danny Ainge and, they're in that subcategory where my Spurs are. We'll take your bad contracts as long as you give us some sort of draft compensation. And then for Minnesota, Conley, could be a more versatile fit for them defensively. And, with Anthony Edwards and Karl-Anthony Towns, he's more of a better off-ball fit for the Timberwolves than D'Angelo Russell was. Like you kind of already alluded to with the Lakers. Kind of needs the ball in his hands. But like you mentioned, an upgrade over Russell Westbrook and especially those other 2 guys, though. So that was a major domino. But the next one has happened. You mentioned we mentioned the Kyrie trade occurred in the morning. Well, for me, the morning, it probably happened like around 11, but I sleep late. This one happened at midnight Central Standard Time. And it was just a shocker to see. But basically, Kevin Durant has been traded to the Phoenix Suns. You mentioned, Kyrie was the first domino for the Brooklyn Nets. Remember, they signed there together. It's kind of been the whole thing is they wanted to, run this team together, not really run, but play together, just create something together. But obviously, it has not worked out. And since Kyrie left, KD was next, and the Suns already kind of been sniffing around trying to get KD, back in the summer. Seems like they finally got through. Here are the trade details. So the Suns obviously get Kevin Durant. They bring back T.J. Warren, add number 3 to the homecoming count. It also included 2 other teams. So it was a 4-team deal. The Milwaukee Bucks and the Indiana Pacers. In regards to Brooklyn, they get 5 first-round picks. 4 first-round picks and 1 first-round pick swap. The pick swap's in 2028. They get Jay Crowder, who they then sent to Milwaukee. That was reported shortly afterwards. But they get Cam Johnson, 2 second-round picks, Mikal Bridges, and Juan Vaughn. I'm guessing he was just kind of a throw-in. No offense, Juan. And then Jay Crowder goes to the Bucks. That's all the Bucks get. And then for Indiana Pacers, they got involved. They bring back George Hill, another homecoming there. I think it's a double one too. Went to Ui Pui. 3 second-round picks. I think one of those actually a pick swap. Serge Ibaka, Jordan Nwora. So Pacers kind of just being okay with being kind of like I said with the Jazz, just facilitators force these deals as long as they get compensation. But anyways, John, your thoughts on the huge Kevin Durant trade?
My first initial thought was, all right, 4 first-round picks. That's what Rudy Gobert nets. So let's talk about the difference of the players between the Gobert and Durant trade. I think the main piece is obviously Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson. All I'm saying is it sounds like Minnesota could have got Kevin Durant for 4 first-round picks, D'Lo, and Malik Beasley. That's all I'm saying. Like, what they got Gobert and Mike Conley for, they could have got Kevin Durant for, apparently. So shout out to Minnesota. But once again, we'll talk about them later.
Sorry,
in this deal,
that would be ironic too, because remember he was kind of traded from Brooklyn in a sign and trade for KD when KD left the Warriors.
Right.
So it would have been ironic if that played out, that they got retraded back to each other at D'Lo's from the Timberwolves.
Would have been hilarious if D'Lo was just eternally the Kevin Durant throw-in piece. Anyway, for these 2 teams, honestly, I like the deal for both sides. For the Nets, it was clear that this wasn't going to work out. Like, Kevin Durant had requested the trade this past offseason. There was the talk with the owner, and things kind of got smoothed over. But in reality, what I think had happened was the owner said, just give us time. Like, we will trade you. Because obviously, once Kyrie had said, because I'm pretty sure last offseason Kyrie said that he was going to play out his contract and leave. Like, he publicly stated he was leaving. And I know that Kyrie tends to be a liar when it comes to his public sentiments. I say that as a Celtics fan because he told us he wanted to stay in front of the entire stadium. But when it comes to him wanting to leave, that seems like something he would not lie about because he's had a track record of leaving in the past. And so Kyrie got traded, and I think that was just because we knew that the KD trade was going to come. And so once Kyrie was out, we knew officially KD is going to be gone too. And really, like I said, I think it was just a matter of them wanting time to try and negotiate, get the best offer possible. I'm imagining the holdup was they wanted more first-round picks because of what happened with the Gobert trade. They're probably, we want 7 first-round picks. But this is what they got. I think it was a good deal because ultimately with Phoenix, the one saving grace for Brooklyn that you're hoping for is Chris Paul, KD, are out of the league within the next 3 or 4 years, and then some of those later picks, maybe the Suns will suck by that point. Now, hoping for that, and then also the other side of that too, where fans are always like, those picks are going to be in the late 20s for years. Like, you can't ever guess. You'll never know. But we'll see. Regardless, just getting that amount of picks is great. I love Mikal Bridges. I think he's a really solid piece. You got him, you got Dinwiddie, you got Ben Simmons, you got Dorian Finney-Smith. You just got a lot of young options. You're not going to be sitting there competing for a championship, but who knows? This team could be good enough to make the 7th or 8th seed run in the East. Could be good enough to make some noise, and then maybe they can flip some of these guys in a bigger package for another star to try and rebuild around later. I don't know. But Cam Johnson as well, also a really good piece. So I like it for Brooklyn just because I think they got a haul. And for Phoenix, I think they had to make a move. You were stuck with Chris Paul. You're sitting there, and once they re-signed DeAndre Ayton, you're stuck with him. Obviously, Booker's on a massive deal. I don't think he's leaving anytime soon. And so the only way to really rejuvenize this team after what happened last year and then even this year, like playing out to where it doesn't look like they were going to be like the favorite to come out of the West by any means. I think they needed to take a big swing. And I know that a lot of people are already criticizing their depth, their defense, and all of those are totally fair concerns. But I think the Phoenix Suns, they did what they had to do, and that's you got to take a big swing and hope it results in a title. And who knows? I mean, I'm a believer in this current squad. I thought that if the Suns were able to pull off the deal, like we talked about it this past offseason, we talked about Kevin Durant, and I thought if they could pull off the deal without including both Bridges and Ayton, if they could include only one of them, then they could be a pretty clear-cut top 2 option out of the West to compete for an NBA championship. Will it happen? I don't know. We got to get into chemistry and iron out all the details throughout the rest of the season. But I think both teams really came out on top in this one.
Yeah, I just want to add to like all these wings. You mentioned, they could also sell them, down the line. But also all these kind of 3-and-D wings maybe helps elevate Ben Simmons' value too. Or maybe they also elevate Ben Simmons, or maybe they say, okay, we can build around Ben Simmons. Just get a bunch of shooters and we're all going to play really good defense. Who knows, like you said. And and just to add on to your first round picks, those later ones, maybe, I feel like this could be definitely said for like the Thunder. Some of these teams that are doing this where maybe they actually hit a few picks and then they are in contention mode. And then those picks, like you mentioned, yes, they're probably going to be in the 20s, but who knows, and closer to that year. So you maybe get a better feel for what they could be, and they could flip those for, pieces that can help them win then. So a lot of flexibility to have with that. But yeah, that was a major one. that would have kept me up. I was about to go to bed. Kept me up in like another hour and a half. I was just about to go to sleep, but then because you didn't want to fall asleep, but then another trade happened. Love, of course, I retweeted my boy CJ. He's like, man, this league you can't go to sleep. Or I forgot the tweet exactly, but anyhow, KD moved. Brooklyn, trying to salvage. Definitely did a better job salvaging their assets than with their other previous terrible acquisitions with your Celtics. So they've learned from their mistakes. But anyhow, unfortunately, not a lot of other huge moves down the line here, but they could be some impactful ones in regards to some of these championship-esque or caliber type teams, or teams that are in that conversation. And this next one is kind of one of those that glorifies that. So it was a 4-team deal between the Lakers, Denver Nuggets, Los Angeles Clippers, and the Orlando Magic. So basically, Denver, they are acquiring center Thomas Bryant. The Clippers get Bones Highland. The Lakers, they get Devon Reed, Mo Bamba. That's a pretty big get for them. And 2 second-round picks. And then Orlando gets Patrick Beverly and a second-round pick. So there are already all the memes of, Pat Bev. He clowned Shams, and Shams was the one to announce that he was going to be sent off elsewhere. Poor Patrick Beverly. Who knows? Maybe him and Russell worked things out. I mean, assuming maybe they did, but who knows? He may have done a fist pump saying, "Yeah, I outlasted you, Russell. I'm going to be on LeBron's team," and then he got shown the door pretty much a day later. Nonetheless, though, John, your thoughts on this 4-team deal?
It's kind of funny that Pat Bev, and I know that sometimes in the NBA there's these guys that I don't know, I think of Kenyon Martin, who their thing that Udonis Haslem, the thing that they provide to the team is toughness, grit, that alpha dog mentality, even though on the court in terms of skill they might not be that alpha dog. And Pat Bev is one of those guys, and I totally respect it because I truly believe that there are people who have that is their career. They're in the NBA because of that, because of their willingness to do the dirty work and play defense and get in people's faces and energize the crowd and the team and all those things. But I just do find it kind of funny that Pat Bev and his loud mouth is kind of getting passed around the NBA, used in trades basically every offseason, every trade deadline. At this point, he is just getting thrown around. So that's funny. Otherwise, I don't have too many thoughts about this trade. I'm interested to see Mo Bamba finally out of Orlando. I don't know. I just always thought he was an immense talent. I always wanted to see what he could do outside of Vucevic's shadow. And then once they got rid of Vucevic, they brought in Wendell Carter, and he's pretty good too. So like it was just he always was kind of having to deal with another center. And although they do have Anthony Davis, AD likes to play the 4. So I don't know. I think it'll be an interesting fit. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I was just gonna throw in. Yeah, you mentioned the whole front court log jam because then they signed Bol, and then I forgot who else. They just for some reason then they're trying to bring back Jonathan Isaac, so it was tough for Mo Bamba to find minutes there. Bones Highland is an interesting one for the Clippers. They've been trying to get a point guard. We'll talk more about that later. John Wall really hasn't worked out for them. Reggie Jackson, hasn't kind of loaded up the money that they've been giving him. So it's an interesting swing here. I think one of the main issues with Highland and the Nuggets was lack of defense. But when you're next to Paul George and number 2 Kawhi Leonard over there, and I feel like that maybe they feel like that can offset some of those issues, and he can maybe start expanding his game because he had moments last year, so that could be a big one for them. And I do like Thomas Bryant for the Nuggets as well. Backup center for Jokic. Hell, you could probably play both of them together. Jokic can't play the 4-ish, or maybe probably Bryant play more of the 4 and Jokic play more of the 5. Whatever you want to do, but against some teams that might run 2 bigs, like the Lakers, that he provides just another chess piece, and regardless, better depth because I think the main guy they had behind him was I want to say Zeke Naji, and then DeAndre Jordan, and DeAndre Jordan's. Sorry, DeAndre, you're on the twilight of your career. Like that's just the truth of it, in my opinion. But yeah, a lot of those second round picks getting thrown around as little fillers for these trades. And let me get to the next one because it also includes a bunch of second rounders. This one may not be hugely impactful, but involves some role players. And it was between the New York Knicks, Philadelphia 76ers, Portland Trail Blazers, and the Charlotte Hornets. The New York Knicks, they acquire Josh Hart, Bojan Dubjevic, and Daniel Diaz. I'm not sure it's D-I-E-Z, so I could easily pronounce that one wrong. Main piece there is Josh Hart, obviously, who found out during warm-ups that he got traded from Portland. Going to Portland, though, the Portland Trail Blazers, they get Cam Reddish, a 2023 first-round pick from the Knicks, top 14 protected, so that's very interesting. Shavim Mallyhook, Mikhailuk, Ryan Arcidiacono. Man, this is really testing me. And Matisse Thybulle and center Ante Tomic. And obviously Matisse Thybulle comes from the Sixers. Sixers, they get Jalen McDaniels and 2 second-round picks from the Jalen McDaniels coming from the Hornets. Hornets get, I guess, this is where I'm reading this from Spot Tracks. I'm not sure who got Svi Mikhailuk, but apparently the Hornets had him for a moment. Don't know. Blame Spot Track. But also thank you at the same time, Spot Track, for this information. And 2 second-round picks. So a lot of role players moved around. Probably won't be an impactful trade. Any thoughts on this one, John?
I don't know how a trade like this came together. Like there's just so many role players on so many mediocre at best teams that I don't know. This trade's just the only thoughts I have is it feels kind of comical. Like how did I feel like this is a trade where somebody was like, "Hey, we want Cam Reddish or Josh Hart or somebody like that." And they're like, "Well, we want this player." And they're like, "Well, we don't want to give that player up." So then all of a sudden they bring in another team to make it even. But then the third team's like, "Well, we want this player." So then they bring in a fourth team. And then all of a sudden 13 players, however many names you had later, here we are with this trade working out. And this feels like one of those trades where you're sitting there and it's like, I can't tell who won, who lost. There's just so many moving pieces that it's like, oh, Yeah, sure. All right. Well, cool. Like, I don't know.
My main question is, how did Portland be the one that ends up with the first round pick? By the way, like if anything, it should have been. I would have assumed it would have been the Hornets because whoever knows the Hornets are tanking. Like they are right with my Spurs in the tank for Wembanyama sweepstakes, and they just get 2 second round picks and Svi Mikhailuk for a young like kind of role player that obviously Philly valued. Um, yeah, just I don't know. We'll see what happens. I mean, Cam Reddish too. I remember when he was rumored to the Spurs. I understand everyone's excitement about his upside, but I mean, maybe he just needs more playing time. But to be, for lack of a better phrase, I'm not sold on Cam Reddish from the start. Still really have been in regards to the hype around him. And even with Josh Hart, like I think Josh Hart's solid, but like, is he really that much of an upgrade for the Knicks? I mean, I look at his shooting numbers, not great. I think that he's like shooting just barely at 30%, which is like today's NBA. You got to be shooting like 40s is where you want your like 30 upper 30s 40s is where you want your average shooters to be. So and let me see, and contract wise Josh Hart costs more too, so it just further hamstrings the Knicks. So who the heck knows what the Knicks are doing. We'll see if it works out for them. I mean, they are in the playoff race like we mentioned last episode, so maybe they feel that's getting him and his college teammate Jalen Brunson back together, getting the gang back. Maybe that'll spark something there. But anyhow, that's that. And the next one I just want to throw in because we'll probably talk about this team later. My Spurs, they traded away Jakob Poeltl to the Raptors. That's all the Raptors got was Jakob Poeltl, which once again another homecoming. We get back Kemp Birch and a first round pick for 2024 and 2 second rounders. Just thought it was odd. Well, like I said, we'll talk about the Raptors later, but that's what I want to throw. Just great to see my Spurs sell. They also sold Josh Richardson for Devontae Graham, a second-round pick. But any thoughts at all on that one? I was just surprised that the Raptors were real buyers, and because he's going to need a contract extension, Pirtle, and that they actually ponied up a first-round pick for Pirtle back. If anything, maybe you wait till the offseason, maybe you can sign him. I don't know. Maybe they just want priority. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, this trade surprised me because I believe the Raptors aren't even in like a play-in spot as of right now.
I got standings up.
Or they're on the brink.
They are 10th, so they are last place in the play-in, tied with the Wizards technically. But I guess they won the tiebreaker, and Pacers right behind them.
So, I mean, like it's pretty possible that like they could not even make the play-in, which just feels so weird. Like you said, to be a buyer to trade a first-round pick. I don't know. Maybe they feel Jakob Poeltl's the answer to that. They haven't really had like a solid option at the 5 since Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka, were both retired / left. So I don't know. It's an interesting trade. We'll see how it works out. I guess maybe this shows commitment behind the current Raptors core because there was some thoughts that maybe they would tear it down, that maybe they would start selling pieces. But I don't know why you would trade a first-round pick away for a player who's, like you said, needing an extension if your plan was to then start selling everybody off. So, I don't know. Interesting move. We'll see what the Raptors are doing, I guess.
Yeah, we'll talk more Raptors later, so I'm not going to use all those points yet. But, yeah. So there's that one. And then this next trade was actually pretty interesting, but it may be nullified. Get into that in a second. But anyway, another 4-team trade here, John. So the Atlanta Hawks, they get Saddiq Bey. They were involved, and obviously because Saddiq Bey coming from the Detroit Pistons. Pistons get James Wiseman. Wiseman coming from the Golden State Warriors. And the Warriors, they acquire Gary Payton II. Ding, ding, another homecoming. Nope, that's not the last one. 2 second-rounders. And then Portland, they get Kevin Knox from the Pistons. And just making sure I have that count. 5 second-round picks. But as for Bleacher Report, like literally right before we started recording, this was from via Rob Goldberg, mentioned that he basically reported that Gary Payton failed his physical, so the Warriors could basically cut off this trade, and I guess no one gets either their pieces between these 4 teams. I'm not sure if they'd have to renegotiate. I don't know the full specifics, but if the trade does go through, what were your thoughts on this one?
I don't know.
It's like a bunch of role players, and then like Wiseman's a lost project. Like Sadiq Bey, I think is like either it's between Bey or Payton. They're like the best pieces and like player wise here.
Yeah, like I guess it's good that the Warriors got Gary Payton the second back because I think he was a pretty key piece for them. I was surprised when he left. It's unfortunate that the Wiseman thing didn't work out because like I said, that was probably one of my worst NBA takes so far in terms of the draft. I'm definitely not an NBA draft expert, so I won't cut myself too hard for that one because I'm much more skilled when it comes to the NFL draft. But I thought Wiseman. I'm pretty sure that year I thought he should have gone number one. But regardless,
To be fair, towards
I guess-
ACL, like he's still in an awkward situation where they're winning, so they're not just going to throw him out there and let him, play 30 minutes and mess up. You know what I mean? Like some of the tanking teams would. So
Right.
good little
Yeah,
reset.
and I would say, I guess, good for the Warriors to like cut bait because I think sometimes some of these teams, you get a guy that you draft really high and you just commit for so long. You're just sitting there hoping that it'll finally work out, and at some point, you just got to realize that it's not going to. And although you're not going to get a haul, I don't know. I guess getting a guy who was a key piece on that championship run, he was very important against the Celtics because of the fact that they couldn't run their death lineup with all those offensive players at the same time. So he would come onto the court in place of either Steph or Clay or Jordan Poole and just kind of fill in that guard defensive spot. And he was really good for them. So, yeah, I don't know. Interesting trade, but we can talk a little bit about it later.
Yeah, I like Sadiq Bey for the Hawks. A good little kind of buy low option for them. I don't think we'll be talking Pistons later, so just a little bit odd. I understand they're kind of just buying the upside because like Jalen Duren's been playing really well for them as a center, but he isn't spacing the floor. But once again, Pistons in a different kind of level, or maybe they're just trying to develop talent, see what sticks, and then they'll just probably trade some other guys. So there's that one. I think that is the last 4-teamer. Yes, that is. And then last major one also involves homecoming. So it's between the Houston Rockets, LA Clippers, and the Memphis Grizzlies. Houston brings back John Wall after he left, and he made some comments about Houston. I think it was a month ago on a podcast. Not good one comments, by the way, at least for Houston. Danny Green also, as the Houston Rockets acquire, and then the Rockets do get a first-round pick. I guess they can pick between the Clippers and OKCs, or maybe it's the Clippers. I'm not sure. It says spot check is LAC-OKC, so I'm guessing just one pick, top 6 protected. Anyway, Clippers though, they get Eric Gordon. Eric Gordon's finally freed, and they get 3 second-round picks. And then the Memphis Grizzlies, they get shooting guard Luke Kennard via the Clippers. Any thoughts in regards to the trade itself, John?
I think this is actually a relatively good move for the Clippers. I think that Eric Gordon kind of provides them what they were hoping to get out of a couple of different players. He can kind of have the shooting of a Luke Kennard, maybe the ball handling of a John Wall. Like he can just, I don't know. I feel like they traded a couple pieces to get one guy who can kind of be a much more impact player. Which I think is a good move because ultimately when it comes to your playoff runs, you don't want a bunch of guys who can kind of fill in a bunch of small roles. You want your bench guys who are going to be, the impactful players coming off the bench because you're usually going to get down to like an 8-man, 9-man rotation. You want some of those guys to be a lot more versatile. And so I think Eric Gordon kind of combines some of those skill sets as some of the bench guys they got rid of. But I do feel bad for John Wall because we saw what happened last time he was in Houston. Obviously, it was partially his own fault because, he's not passing up that money. But the guy just wants to be free. And when he finally got his choice of where to go, he went to the Clippers, and they just sent him right back.
Yeah, I remember he's so excited, and I'm not trying to dog John Wall, but just I remember that he was like, man, like I'm going to be the third option, and we're going to be trouble, basically. And sorry, John, you got kicked to the curb, unfortunately. So that is really it trade-wise, like I said. But there are a few other moves. I will say the Clippers, they did get rid of Reggie Jackson. I guess they traded him to the Charlotte Hornets and a second-round pick, and the Clippers got back Mason Plumlee. They, too, have kind of been in the market for center for past couple of years. So, kind of getting get a Plumlee, you know what you're getting. Usually, probably pretty solid at everything, but not amazing at anything. So, could be probably actually a really good grab for them.